In the otherwise quiet Capitol Hill apartment, the solitary notification from the phone illuminated the kitchen counter. On Friday at 8 o'clock, I will wear the silver dress to a table for two at the pink door. My breath stuck in my chest like a blade. Who were they? This is Chloe. Coley, not I, Eleanor Harper. Upstairs, my husband Nathan is ignorant to the fact that this single message has broken our 15-year marriage. The shower is hissing. As the night descended upon me, the bright lights of Seattle danced in mockery. Chloe, who was she? We had vowed to preserve the pink door for our 10th anniversary. Why was Nathan going to ruin our romantic evening there by calling it off for a work trip? With my hands quaking, I nervously hovered over his phone. Once a stronghold trust has become a shackle. I entered the 4 digits that had once signified eternity, our wedding date, unveiling a hidden realm of letters, images, and a life I had no say in. The screen opened. His freelance journalist, Chloe Mitchell, and him had an 8-month affair of whispers. I was taken aback. From the restroom resounded Nathan's easygoing, carefree voice. The words, "Hey Ellie, have you seen my gray tie?" sent a thump from my chest like a battle drum. If I wanted to, I could yell, hurl the phone, and demand an explanation. But no. With a calm, unwavering voice, I placed it down precisely as it was. If the person you cared about the most was telling a fib, what would you do? Top drawer Nathan. The city's light was the only thing that kept me awake that night while Nathan slept. This went beyond simple treachery. It was an intentional, repeated decision. But I wasn't the kind of woman to just let it all out, cry, or forgive without thinking. The truth would be illuminated more brilliantly than Seattle's skyline if I were Eleanor Harper. The pink door would transform from a mere eatery by Friday into the setting for the revelation of Nathan's falsehoods, and I would be there ready to rise rather than watch him fall. Hi, I'm Eleanor Harper, and I'm a financial counselor in my hirsute Seattle apartment. I've been doing this for years. My life shines like the Puget Sound at sunset, and the world sees me as the lady with a keen intellect, a steady hand, and a brilliant existence. My 42-year-old real estate lawyer husband, Nathan Brooks, is the type of guy who can turn heads just by smiling and shaking hands. We've been a married couple for 15 years, and our chic Capitol Hill apartment overlooks Seattle's skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. What about our lives? Very picturesque. A shared schedule of client dinners and charity galas, Hawaiian vacations in the summer, and Sunday breakfasts at Pike Place. Our friends gushed over us, saying that we had it all. But isn't perfection fleeting? Until you notice the fissures, it shines like glass. Lately, Nathan has been somewhat aloof, working late into the night, providing canned responses, and smelling an odd scent on his blazer. Big cases demanding clients, that was the excuse I gave myself. I would notice him glancing at his phone, thumb twitching, and then securing it as soon as I entered the room. Just work, he would remark, averting his gaze from me occasionally. He had my trust, perhaps I only intended to. 15 years of promises. Laughter and vows exchanged under a wet Seattle sky laid the groundwork for trust. Trust fell apart that night, though, as the city buzzed outside. The rain tapped on the windows like an agitated ghost on a Tuesday. Nathan had dropped his phone on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower. Silence was broken by a gentle ping. The snoop in me never turned out to be the real thing. Still, I felt compelled to look at that shining screen. Maybe it was an instinct. An uncomplicated and merciless notice was sent. The pink door, a table for two at 8:00 p.m. The sender, I'll wear the silver dress on Friday. This is Chloe, when I felt that my heart froze. For our 10th wedding anniversary, we had envisioned the Pink Door as the restaurant of our dreams. Nathan called it quits, saying he had to go to Portland for business. We skipped it. A passionate evening with her was now in his plans. The weight of the phone caused me to stand still. Chloe, who was she? For my hubby, why was she dressed in a silver gown? As the water trickled down the drain, the shower abruptly ended. I entered the 4 digits that had once felt holy, our wedding date. My world went into a tailspin the moment the phone swung open. Communications spanning 8 months with hundreds of texts included. One of Nathan's employees was the freelance writer Chloe Mitchell. With her head resting on his shoulder and his smile brighter than I'd seen in years, they swapped morning coffee orders, late-night jokes, and images from a work trip to San Francisco. "I already miss you," she wrote. "Looking forward to Friday," he said. Anxiety gripped me as breath left my lungs. This was no casual affair. Nathan created this existence and this hidden universe apart from me. "Did you see my gray tie, Ellie?" As if he hadn't just set fire to our marriage, Nathan's speech startled me with its nonchalant tone. Despite my trembling palms, I just put the phone down just like before. I said the words "top drawer" in a flat, unfamiliar voice. Not even he noticed. As I laid next to him that night, his rhythmic breathing provided a harsh contrast to the pounding in my chest. His late nights had been justified. How many times did he lock his phone? That unfamiliar scent of perfume, I was forgotten, not only deceived. A gloomy and dismal morning arrived. While muttering something about a client meeting, Nathan carelessly kissed my cheek. "Good luck," I said, my voice barely audible. I sat at the kitchen table, my coffee lukewarm, looking at the city as the door clicked shut. I was being dragged under as the boats from Seattle slid over the Sound. Love, trust, and shared dreams gone after 15 years. Still a spark ignited within that void. Nor anger nor tears, but understanding. It wasn't me, the woman who wouldn't crumble or plead. In my role as Eleanor Harper, I would force Nathan to confront reality, using pinpoint accuracy rather than cries for help. His ideal evening would not include a visit to the Pink Door on a Friday. That would be Mize. I couldn't swallow or spit out the truth. It sat heavy in my chest. Nathan's covert affair with Chloe Mitchell was more than a betrayal. It was an intentional dismantling of all that I had worked so hard to establish. After 15 years of marriage, when she made him her first choice every day, all she has left is a dinner reservation at the Pink Door and some stolen texts. When we were at our Capitol Hill apartment that night, I could have confronted him and yelled until the walls vibrated. However, I required a more pointed instrument, and anger is not it. I required the truth to sever with no space for deceit. On Friday, Nathan would finally meet me, the woman he had undervalued, not the wife he had taken for granted. I began by addressing Chloe. Her name was a burning question mark that I needed to resolve. As I sat at my desk, I opened my laptop, gazing out the window at the gray Seattle skyline. The following person was found after a brief check of Nathan's corporate website, Chloe Mitchell, a freelance writer in her mid-30s who possessed a radiant smile and keen eyes. Coffee shops, book launches, and sunsets were the public subjects of her social media, which she had carefully cultivated. After that, I spotted her husband, Ryan Carter. His profile was filled with candid photos and gloomy landscapes. He is a photographer located in Seattle. An exhibition in a Belltown gallery was highlighted in his biography. Looking back at me, Ryan's eyes were warm and vulnerable. Even if he was innocent, he should have known, exactly as I am. Despite the turmoil in my chest, I composed an email with firm fingers. Hello, my name is Eleanor Harper, and I'm a financial consultant in Seattle who is helping to plan a benefit art show for local artists. My name is Mr. Carter. I would be delighted to talk with you about the possibility of showcasing your photography after seeing your current work. Shall we arrange to meet at the Pink Door on Friday at 8:00 p.m. to discuss the details? Polite expert, impeccably neat. With my pulse pounding, I pressed send. Ryan responded 2 hours later, saying, Ms. Thank you very much, Harper. It is absolutely ideal for Friday at 8:00. Exhaling a strategy was taking form, and I was looking forward to it. In the face of reality, rather than wrath, Ryan would stand by my side. However, other revelations awaited, even though I hadn't finished opening it yet. Nathan's phone was like a Pandora's box. While he went out for a client breakfast the following morning, I accessed our joint account with his banking app. A knot formed in my gut. A $2,500 miscellaneous withdrawal from 2 weeks ago. After doing some more digging, I located an email receipt in his inbox that mentioned a diamond necklace that I had bought from a Pike Place store. The receipt said it was for a special occasion, not our anniversary. Nothing special happening on my birthday. We spent our own money on the necklace for Chloe. The money aspect added insult to injury to the emotional violation. Our future was in jeopardy because Nathan had stolen more than just my trust. My college buddy Maya is now a divorce lawyer, and hearing her voice was a lifeline when I contacted her. Am I to believe this? Ellie, with a gentle yet determined tone, she inquired. Maya, I'm not really certain. Everything, the texts, the jewelry, and the dinner was explained. I finished. No hesitancy on her part. Trust us to keep you safe. I may put the joint account on hold and open a new one in your name for you by drafting the necessary paperwork. Maya had transferred $50,000 to an untraceable account before lunchtime, proving that her motivation was survival rather than greed. By taking what rightfully belonged to me, I wasn't committing theft. I felt stable, like if the floor underneath me wasn't giving way after what felt like days of that. I got ready like a commander for combat. On Friday, calm and collected, I dialed the Pink Door. At 8 o'clock in the evening, please, if at all possible, a table for 2 by the window, ideally located near the reserve under Brooks Partners in business, you see. The hostess hesitated before agreeing. We will put you in a close seat, ma'am. Have you any specific needs? Even though she couldn't perceive it, I grinned. With the words, just a clear view, the scene was established. After Nathan deemed it too bold for a low-key dinner, I dug it out of the depths of my wardrobe and put on a red dress. Is it too daring? Very well. I wore purposeful heels, pulled my hair up, and applied lipstick like armor. Appearance was of little importance. Just turning up was the point. I couldn't shake the shadow of uncertainty that had crept in. Is it possible I may be mistaken? Was there a miscommunication since Chloe was actually a coworker? His "can't wait to see you in that dress" and her "laughing in a San Francisco hotel room" were the texts that kept playing in my head. It was genuine. The lady who would run away from it was not me. The burden of 15 years persisted nevertheless. Nathan, who had proposed on a boat while drenched in rain and smiling, was still there. He had just decided to vanish. Though I wept for him, I would not spare him. With his tie undone and his gaze elsewhere, Nathan returned home late on Thursday night. "Huge case tomorrow," he said as he poured himself a whiskey. I tossed my tea and nodded. I hope it goes well. Jung, he failed to perceive the intensity in my voice or the fervor in my gaze. I went to bed in the guest room and pretended to have a headache. With the pulsating lights of Seattle outside, I stood alone and gazed at the ceiling. The Pink Door will be more than just a restaurant tomorrow. A reckoning would ensue. I took a half day off from work, the morning of claiming a personal concern as the reason. A gentle woman with keen intuition, my employer gave me a little push on the arm. "Be careful, Ellie." I nodded, appreciative of the room. The account transfer was finalized while I was at home, reviewing Maya's documents. I reserved a room at the Edgewater, a hotel with a view of the Sound, and packed a carry-on with necessities and an extra set of clothing. I wouldn't want to share a bed with Nathan if Friday turned out to be a total disaster. Not only was I prepared to confront, but I was also prepared to leave. The icing on the cake was Ryan's part. "It has come to my attention that you are married to Chloe Mitchell." I wanted to confirm our meeting and provide some further information, so I wrote a follow-up email. Would she be available to meet with us to go over the press coverage of the Exhibit A trial run? Ryan would have mentioned Chloe's plans if he had known about them. "I will convey the idea to Chloe, but she is busy on Friday," was his snappy response. "Join us at the Pink Door." I felt terrible for him. Like me, he was completely oblivious. However, that will change soon. As the sun set over the Olympic Stadium on Friday, I stood in front of the mirror, my red dress enveloping my figure and my shoes shining. I no longer reflected the Eleanor who had disregarded the warning signals and patiently awaited Nathan's blessing. Eleanor was honesty, steel, and fire. I retrieved my clutch, which had the hotel key, and proceeded to the elevator. A pink door stood ready. Nathan imagined he had planned the ideal evening for Chloe. The man was mistaken. It would be mine if I rewrote the conclusion. With its pink neon sign throwing a gentle blush over Post Alley. The Pink Door shimmered like a gem in the dusk of Seattle. The inside was filled with the sound of clinking glasses, laughing that was barely audible, and the subtle strumming of a guitarist off to the side. The hostess escorted me to a table by the window when I arrived early, my crimson dress glistening in the sunlight. With Elliott Bay glistening in the distance and an empty table designated for Nathan Brooks directly across from me, the vista was picture perfect. Similar to a drum in the moments before a storm, my heartbeat was steady yet intense. As I waited, the icy glass of martini pressed against my fingertips, I placed my order. This wasn't your average supper, and every sip confirmed it. We were at war. On the dot of 8 o'clock, Ryan Carter strode, in his towering stature dominating the entrance. His grin was pleasant and somewhat worn from working long hours. He wore a black jacket. "Charlotte Ella." He reached out a hand and asked, firmly shaking it. I got to my feet. "Ryan, I appreciate you making the effort to come." His hand was solid and his gaze was kind. As we sat down, I skillfully guided the discussion towards his photography, a safe and neutral topic. "When I told you your exhibit in Belltown was stunning, I meant it." He spoke with a gleam in his eye as he passionately discussed the Sound in black and white, his enthusiasm radiating like a gentle flame. However, I couldn't help but stare at the door. The entrance would be opened by Nathan at any second now. Finally, he did. Walking with self-assuredness, Nathan wore the blue suit I had chosen for his last birthday, his hair pulled up in a stylish manner. Next to him stood Chloe Mitchell, who gleamed in an iridescent silver gown that reflected the room's lights. A dagger was slipped into my chest, As they giggled, her fingers caressing his arm. As I had intended, the hostess escorted them to the table adjacent to ours. With the same smile he used to save for me, Nathan took Chloe's chair out. I stabilized my martini glass even though it shook. Ryan, completely unaware, was in the midst of describing an Olympic shooting event. As I nodded, my attention wavered and my nerves jangled. It followed. Nathan's gaze shifted to meet mine. His expression turned expressionless as he instinctively grasped the wine glass, preventing it from falling to the floor. Chloe looked directly into his eyes when she noticed me, and her laughter ceased. Ryan hadn't seen yet, but her eyes flared and darted to him. I kept my demeanor composed and unwavering as I locked eyes with Nathan. No words escaped his lips, even as he opened them. Very well, allow him to writhe. My voice was silky as I turned back to Ryan. I thought you were bringing up the lights, right? Unaware of the impending earthquake, he proceeded. Like a chess master, I patiently awaited his next move. With a hint of anticipation for their special night, the waiter delivered a bottle of Pinot Noir to Nathan's table. Chloe leant in close, muttering something, her earrings catching the light. When Nathan's fingers briefly touched hers, it ended there. The tipping moment for me. Using the funds from our joint account, I retrieved the diamond necklace from Nathan's briefcase and placed it in the little velvet box I had stashed in my purse. I got to my feet and made my way to their table, the sound of my heels crunching underfoot. As the din from the restaurant gradually died out, heads cocked slightly. "I can't believe we've met, Chloe," I remarked, maintaining a calm and steady voice. She said, "I'm Eleanor Nathan's wife." Her expression turned pale, and she silently gasped. Nathan gasped for air and said, "Ellie, what are you?" But I interrupted him and gently thumped the velvet box down onto the table. "Oh, Nathan, you totally forgot about this." The term "our" hit like a gavel, and I assumed Chloe may be interested since it was paid for by our account. Ryan, who had at last looked up, a look of perplexion crossing his face, was the object of Chloe's intense gaze as her fingers instinctively went to her lips. My tone was soft but forceful as I turned to Ryan. "Ryan, this is Nathan, my husband, and I think you're familiar with Chloe." He blinked as if comprehending, and then got up his chair squeaking. "What is happening, Chloe?" His speech had a hint of pain. "Ryan, I can explain," Chloe muttered, and Nathan struggled to straighten his face, becoming pale. I lifted a hand to silence him and said, "Ellie, let's talk privately." "Nathan, no. Your time to hide has come to an end. No one here does." Waiters froze. Customers glanced over, creating a tableau vivant in the restaurant. I was indifferent. Her eyes were watering as I stared at Chloe. "You really believed you could pull off this game? Huh? An evening spent incognito with soft candlelight and a glass of wine. Ryan, however, is deserving of honesty." "So do I said to Ryan, my voice muted now. "Could we, Ryan, enter a private room?" He seemed confused, but he nodded and followed me as I motioned for the waiter to bring us more information. "Please, a quiet area. We should combine our table with Mr. Brooks's. Things need to be resolved." Sensing the tension, the waiter gave a subtle nod. "Say it again, ma'am." In little time at all, we were led into a cozy room with dimly lit walls and a table for four. Ryan sat down next to me, his fists tightly crossed. Like inmates awaiting trial, Nathan and Chloe trailed behind. With its closing, the door muffled the low buzz of the eatery. The only sound that shattered the dense silence was Chloe's nervous breath. Nathan began by speaking, his voice quivering. "Ellie, I'm at a loss for words." I poured water into my glass and said, "Start with the necklace." The sound of the ice breaking was harsh, the texts too. Meanwhile, San Francisco is another option. My eyes were wide open, Nathan. My voice remained steady, but every word was a dagger after 8 months of falsehoods. As Chloe mumbled, "I'm so sorry," I chose to disregard her and instead looked at Ryan. "You're married to her, Ryan. I'm married to him. No more excuses, no more crying. What we deserve is the truth. Notify us." Ryan looked directly at Chloe and spoke in a rough voice. "Is that so? So you and he—" While sobbing uncontrollably, Chloe nodded. At first it was simply talking. It wasn't meant to escalate. At home, Ryan, I felt completely unnoticed. It seemed like you were always working, and Ryan's jaw clenched in response. Visible, non-existent Chloe. "I dreamed about your exhibition opening for months. He was in agony and I was in agony. Our wounds were left bare. I thought you were happy." In a state of desperation, Nathan looked across at me. "I made a mistake, Ellie. Yes, I did. However, I implore you not to squander 15 years. I grinned not warmly, but with the composure of someone who has weathered a fire. "I will put a stop to it, I promise. The first time you addressed her as a baby when I was sleeping next to you. Ended it, Nathan. Over our vows, you choose her." "Now I choose me," he said with a defeated look in his eyes and a slouched back. Chloe broke down in tears as she said, "I never meant to hurt anyone." I made no move to hide my gaze from her. "You did more than harm me, Chloe." Ryan felt distressed by your actions. Your own self-inflicted harm is real. The truth hurts you more than it hurts anybody else. Ryan stood up, his voice suddenly calm and collected. "I've finished, Chloe." With appreciation in his eyes, he turned to face me and said, "I can't live with this. Eleanor, I am grateful. You showed me things I was too scared to look at." From my clutch, I removed the hotel key and set it on the table. "Tonight, Nathan, I will be staying at the Edgewater. Please vacate the premises by Monday at the latest." He went to grab my hand, but I resisted the urge to make things more difficult. In response to Ellie's request, I shook my head in disapproval. "You no longer have the authority to refer to me in that manner." I directed my attention towards Ryan. "The way you found out is unfortunate, but you're not alone." He nodded, and we silently made an agreement. I left, abandoning Nathan and Chloe to face the fallout of their deceit. I went out into the chilly night of Seattle, my heels resonating on the cobblestones, and the lights of the pink door became hazy. Without turning around, I continued on. In the midst of the devastation caused by the truth, I found liberation. As I stepped out of the pink door, the night air pounded me like a jolt of refreshing water, sharp and pure. Despite the mayhem I had just left behind, the lights of Seattle twinkled over Post Alley. Each stride made a bold statement as my heels slid across the cobblestones. I was not jogging. I wasn't about to snap. Eleanor Harper here, and I was making my own decision. In the distance, the Edgewater Hotel stood, its inviting light beckoning as a safe haven. Room 504. A haven where Nathan's deceit could not penetrate was the key card I held in my fist. Once inside, I secured the door, took off my shoes, and positioned myself near the window. The dark and seemingly infinite Elliott Bay lay below, reflecting the calm determination that was building in my heart. No, I kept my tears bottled inside. I am not ready just yet. I felt a weightlessness, a return to my raw living self, as the years of 15 years slipped away. I could still hear Nathan's quavering voice and his broken promises pleading with me. "Ellie, what a waste of 15 years. Nathan, it's too late. You discarded it along with all the other text secrets and money that was spent on Chloe's jewelry. Perched on the bedside table, my crimson gown draping over me, I reached for the phone and called Maya. My voice remained firm as I declared, "It's done." He is aware, both of them do. Maya breathed her lawyer's composure, melting into camaraderie. "Are you all right, Ellie?" I stopped and stared at the light of the city. At this time, no delays, she said. She would be the one to file for a divorce on Monday. "You're more resilient than you realize," she remarked, wondering whether strength was simply enduring the moment that you believed would shatter you. I hung up the phone. The dawn broke and Seattle was shrouded in a gentle mist. Leaving the Edgewater, I threw my tiny bag over my shoulder and checked out. Capitol Hill was still home, but it wasn't the same flat. With the radio turned off and my mind racing, I made my way back. Seated on the couch, Nathan sported disheveled hair and crimson eyes. Exhausted, he remained standing as I walked in. "Ellie, we really must have a conversation." I relaxed carefully, setting my suitcase down. He said the words, "Talk then," in a disorderly handwriting. "You are aware that I have deceived you. Stupid and afraid I am. But I'll do anything, go to therapy. Cut Chloe off if I have to." I begged him not to go, but when I looked into his eyes, I saw a whole stranger, the guy I'd loved since I was 24 years old. "Nathan, you betrayed me in more ways than one. Then you eliminated me." With his hands in his hair, he slumped back, explaining that every decision you made with her was a one that hurt us. "Ellie, I love you," I said, while clenching my jaw and raising my voice. "Love is truthful. I've had enough of shielding your mask. We'll go by Monday." He lay flat on the couch as I strode away. There were too many ghosts in the apartment for it to seem real. Using Maya's connections, I rented a modest flat in Belltown and set off for my new home with a bag full of clothing books and my grandmother's pearl earrings. Although it was my perspective, the vista was little and lacked a panoramic skyline. I vowed to paint something fresh and authentic when I placed a canvas on the wall. On that first night, I sobbed into my glass of wine, surrounded by the sounds of the city, not for Nathan, but for the self-esteem-deprived Eleanor who had lingered for far too long. I had earned the release of my honest, sloppy tears. Next day, Ryan sent a text message that was as uncertain as the morning light. "Do you have coffee?" We met in a cafe near Pike Place, where the air was crisp with the scent of roasted beans and sea salt. I could use someone who gets it. His normally radiant self was fatigued. He casually mentioned Chloe's gone while fiddling with his cappuccino. Transferred to Portland, claimed she wanted a new beginning. As I sipped my coffee, I nodded in agreement. "Is that you?" Watching the hustle and bustle of the market, he sighed. Separating from a spouse, both of us had weathered the storm, but now I can't erase her actions. At last he managed to utter the words, "Eleanor, thanks for being honest with me." I smiled a little, but genuine one, because even if it aches, it's better than living a lie. "Ryan, we are not in this alone." Wow, that's impressive. Months passed and I got back on my feet. Plants, plush carpets, and my first sloppy paintings, swirls of gold and blue, like the sound at sunrise, became my home in the Belltown apartment. Strangers who became sisters in a women's organization I joined. It seemed as if I were losing flesh as I told my narrative of Nathan, Chloe, and the pink door. Following that, I was embraced by a woman who was a cook and had her own scars. "Eleanor, you didn't merely survive. Her words stayed with you like a seed taking root. You flourished. I found solace in my work." With renewed self-assurance and zero remorse, I took on larger clientele. Yet the subtle shift was more noticeable. I began writing about my experiences with betrayal, anger, and recovery on an anonymous blog. Sincere and unfiltered prose poured, and my audience discovered me. Thanks to the hundreds and then thousands of comments like, "You gave me courage to leave," and "I'm not alone," the blog and I both expanded. What started as a one-off appearance in a bookshop in my area grew into a string of speaking engagements. I felt strong not because I was flawless, but because I was myself when I stood in front of an audience and spoke my story of self-selection. Our regular coffee dates allowed Ryan and I to remain in touch. We discussed our ambitions, the burden of starting again, and our divorce on a wet bench by the Sound in Pike Place, Fremont. Brutal pictures of crumbling piers and flowering moss were his most recent shots which he showed me. "Beauty in the ruins," he dubbed it. Nodding, I acknowledged. He finally spoke out one night, asking, "You ever consider giving it another go?" Perhaps in the future. His eyes were calm and collected as I stared at him. "Perhaps," I said, "but only with someone who looks at me with genuine interest," he said, and I could see he meant it. At a Pioneer Square charity banquet a year down the road, I ran into Nathan. He sat near a bar looking older, thinner, and less charismatic than before. Reluctantly, he walked over. "Eleanor, you look absolutely stunning." I nodded in agreement as my navy dress shimmered in the sunshine and my pearls catches the eye. "I'm okay, Nathan. You?" He looked down and swallowed. "Not very good." Then Chloe departed. I was marginalized by the business. I waited emotionless and distant. I had lost it everything. He said, "I'm sorry," in a harsh voice. To the fullest extent, we locked eyes. "May you discover tranquilly." "But I already have," he said as he receded from the scene, disappearing into the onlookers. The lights of Seattle seemed like a constellation as I stood on the balcony of my condo that night. I was no longer the naive Eleanor whose blog had blossomed into a book contract whose paintings adorned the walls of a neighborhood cafe and whose phone number had been preserved as friend maybe more. I was the Eleanor who had learnt to love herself, first rebuilt from ash, and confronted the truth. With complete freedom and fearlessness, I joined the city's hum and hummed back. Perched on the brink of Puget Sound, the skyline of Seattle glowed like a mosaic in the fading light. Subtly, the water lapping on the shore revealed secrets to the darkness. With a little canvas in my fingers, I held my most recent creation, a self-portrait adorned with daring blues and golds. It was far from flawless, but it was mine. I felt complete for the first time in years, as the sea air carried the aroma of liberation and salt. Standing silently at my side, like the ferries sailing across the bay, was Ryan Carter. Without saying a word, he just grasped my hand, the promise-free pressure in his touch. Just two souls who had survived a raging inferno and found solace in one another. No lofty promises, no predetermined future. So beautiful were the stars that I couldn't help but grin as I gazed up at them. It hadn't shattered me, betrayal. I was liberated by it. Once upon a time, I was Eleanor Harper, the trusting woman who failed to see the signs of discord in her 15-year marriage. I could have perished at the hands of Nathan's deceit, his covert relationship with Chloe Mitchell. I felt like I was about to lose it all that night at the Pink Door when I told it like it was. I opted for something greater, though me. It was more than simply leaving a man behind when I left Nathan. It was making progress towards a life where my value was significant and my emotions weren't used as leverage. 6 months ago, in a calm office setting, the divorce was finalized. There were no tears, only relief. Nathan, now only a shell of his former self, relocated to Tacoma. He was someone I didn't despise. No, that was unnecessary. That was sufficient punishment. He had lost me. A coffee cup that Ryan left behind, ivy draping over bookcases, and paint-splattered easels have brought my Belltown loft to life. The raw narrative of betrayal and rebirth that was my blog blossomed became a book, Choosing Me. And it has affected thousands. Not as a victim, but as a strong woman. That is how I present myself at events. Occasionally, Ryan may be seen there cheering from behind, and his smile conveys more than words can. We're taking our time. If love does arrive, it will be gentle, sincere, and based on trust. Our current status is that of friends, survivors, and perhaps more. We trade images. I show him my artwork, and he shows me his. We dance, we mend, we breathe. Pain isn't the end, as I learned in Seattle. Instead of a period, it's a comma, a pause. Even though it hurts, betrayal may be a compass that leads you to inner strength you never knew you possessed. I made the decision to prioritize myself, not because I was angry, but because I love myself and the woman I'm growing into. Not to Nathan's spirit, but to the future I get to create. My heart is open. I own the sound and all of its creations, including every stroke, word, and stride. This is what I've discovered, and I really hope you remember it. I recommend starting with following your intuition, that soft murmur, the one that says something is amiss. Pay heed. This is the truth coming from you. Second it. Prioritize your own needs. Your value is independent on the decisions made by others. Get out of there if they treat you disrespectfully. What they say about you isn't worth it. Thirdly, depend on other people. Strangers like my women's group and friends like Maya are like a safety net. They catch you when you fall. Finally, remember to forgive, but also do not forget. Let go and go forward. Forgiveness isn't for them. 5. Discover what ignites you. Do something that is uniquely yours. Paint, write, dance. You rediscover delight in this way. Are you in agreement? Was it the best choice for me to pick myself up after Nathan betrayed me and start over? Alternatively, was it wise to struggle for a marriage that had already ended? Tell us your tale down below. We value your opinion. If you were touched by this, stay tuned for more tales of bravery, honesty, and fresh starts. Stick to it. The road ahead isn't smooth. Feel free to get it. Underestimate your strength.